If you want to know something about yourself, sit on your bed one night and say, what's one thing I'm doing wrong, that I know I'm doing wrong, that I could fix, that I would fix? You meditate on that, you'll get an answer. And it won't be one you want, but it'll be the necessary one. When you're trapped, some of it's your own inadequacy. What you can do to begin with is every bloody thing you possibly can do to put yourself in the most virtuous and powerful negotiating position possible. Wherever I go in the world, people come up to me and they often have a pretty rough story to relate. It's an awful thing because you see, even in the revelation of their triumph, the initial depth of their despair. So I wouldn't change that. But it's not nothing. And it's certainly not just happiness. It's better than happiness, but it's almost unbearable.
So I believe it's really difficult to truly connect with someone if you're not speaking and being your truth. I think I was wearing a mask in my relationships in the context of I didn't express how I was thinking and feeling. I was trying to be who I thought my partner wanted me to be. And at the point when I let down the mask and I started speaking my truth, actually, as I was departing from the relationship got stronger than ever before. And it was like we were never actually connected until I was being true with her, with my feelings, with what I wanted, with my life. And since then, I would categorize my relationship as being the strongest thing I've ever seen in terms of a romantic connection with someone.
Having said that, one of the things that Carl Jung, the great psychotherapist, said about a persona is, don't be thinking that you're better off if you never formed one. So for Jung, it was a voyage from, say, undifferentiated self in infancy and so forth, through persona to authenticity, because you have to act out your ideals to some degree, right? And you also have to formulate a avatar of yourself. The problem arises when that functional shell is all that there is, and then the real person underneath is just desperate and unhappy because nothing of what's being acted out reflects a true underlying reality. And so if you aren't truthful, and that means, unfortunately, especially at the beginning, when you start to be truthful, it means deeply coming to terms with your inadequacies in humility. Without that, you don't have the adventure of your life. You have the role that you've acquiesced to. And that'll take all the meaning out of your life.
The adventure of your life. You say, imagine who you could be and then aim single-mindedly at that. I encounter these young people who appear to know who they could be, or they've imagined who they could be, but for whatever reason, they seem to choose the certain misery of their current situation, the job that's sucking their soul out, or that relationship, over the uncertainty they'll encounter as they go on the adventure of their life. So what would I say to these young people who always say to me, Steve, I want to do this, but you can see them stifled by fear because it's like...
Yeah, well, it's like, make a plan, man. So the first thing I would ask is, well, do you have your resume or CV in order? You know, I didn't do so well in college and I'm kind of embarrassed about my resume. Let's at least update it. You'd say, well, I came to terms with that 6 months ago, and in an effort to rectify it, I'm taking the following courses, and here's my plan for completion. That's a really good answer. And anyone with any sense who's interviewing will accept that as an indication that although you're not perfect, and who is, that you have a good plan and that you've thought it through. Like, that's the kind of answer that in all likelihood will cement your candidacy for the position. Okay, so now you're going to go to your boss. Well, you have to have your CV and your resume in order. And you have to be able to stand on it solidly, and which at least means that you're prepared to address the inadequacies in a credible, realistic, believable, and truthful manner. All right, now what you do is apply for like 10 jobs, but maybe you have to go to an interview or 2 or 3 or 4. And so now you can go to your boss and say, here's the situation I'm in here at work. Here's what I could do for you if you gave me a 40% raise and the opportunity to progress, but I'd like to see a plan for that. And I've been looking for other opportunities before conducting this discussion, and I have some. Well, then, if your boss treats you with contempt at that point and doesn't listen, then perhaps he or she is a little more narcissistic than might be optimal, and it's time to find a new job. So,
on that point of understanding my inadequacies or someone's inadequacies, I really believe that it's really difficult to undergo self-development if you don't have self-awareness.
No, a good exercise for that. It's like a prayer in some sense. In fact, I would say it's proper prayer. If you want to know something about yourself, sit on your bed one night and say to yourself, you got to mean this. Like, you got to be desperate. This is no game, this. It's like, my life is not everything I want it to be, and perhaps it's not everything that I need it to be. And by need, I mean my life is so unbearable that the suffering that's attendant upon that is make me nihilistic, cynical, bitter, resentful, homicidal, genocidal, unable to have a good relationship, prone to punish people for their virtues because of my jealousy, driving the proclivity to see evil everywhere except within my own heart. And you ask yourself, you sit on the bed and say, okay, man, I'm ready to learn something. What's one thing I'm doing wrong, that I know I'm doing wrong, that I could fix, that I would fix? It's like, you meditate on that, you'll get an answer. And it won't be one you want, but it'll be the necessary one. And it's often something that will point you to small things. So Carl Jung said, people in the modern world don't see God because they don't look low enough. And so imagine you're in your messy bedroom, and you're sitting on the edge of the bed trying to have an honest dialogue with yourself. And the little voice says, it's pretty disgusting in here. And you think, well, I'm way above such trivial niceties as organizing my room. Well, that's pride. That's arrogance. If you're above organizing what's actually yours, how in the world are you ever going to organize anything else? And so you get on your knees and you think, well, it's time to, take a brush to the toilet. And maybe that's where you start. You start making those micro improvements, like real micro improvements, real on the ground, actual micro improvements to things that are wrong, you'll improve unbelievably rapidly. And when you reach the pinnacle of the hill, you want to stop and appreciate the vision, but the next thing you want is a higher hill in the distance, because it's the uphill climb that it's from the uphill climb that we derive our value. And I mean this technically. So almost all the positive emotion we feel, especially the emotion that fills us with enthusiasm, and that's to be filled with the Spirit of God, by the way, because that's what enthusiasm means. That's experienced in relationship to a goal. And so in some sense, and this is part of the religious enterprise, you want a goal that you can never attain, right? But it's not, because as you pursue that goal, you put yourself together and your life does get better and richer and more abundant. You want them to be above everything you're doing so you can continually move towards something that's more sublime and better. That's what you are. You're here to live, not to sleep. And the problem with the vision of Mai Tais on the beach is that, well, first of all, that's a vision of drug-induced unconsciousness, brilliantly and terribly. It's not happy, but that's better than happiness. And maybe if you're lucky, while you're pursuing that and while you're immersed in it, you get to be happy, and you should fall on your knees and be grateful for that when it happens. It really is a gift, and it comes upon you unexpectedly, your happiness. Well, I believe that truth will save the world. So you speak truthfully and you watch what happens and you take your consequences. And maybe you hope and have some faith that in the final analysis, things will work out in your favor, but perhaps they will and perhaps they won't. But that's faith, eh? Faith isn't believing in things you regard as ridiculous, sacrificing your intellect. It's a decision, you can find out.
Thank you doesn't seem to quite cut it for the impact you've had even on me, and also for giving me your time. I know you understand the tremendous value of time. I've seen it so much in your work. So I'm going to say thank you, but I'm also going to make a commitment to do something which I think is more important, which is just to be truthful. And I think with the platform I have and the years I have ahead of me, maybe that's the greatest good that I can do to the world. So because you've come here, that's a pledge and a commitment I want to make to you as my highest form of thanks that I can give in a karmic way. Hopefully that will make the world a better place for everybody.
Well, at least it will help ensure that you won't make the world a worse place.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
For everything. Thank you.